Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Adobe Substance 3D Viewer. This is a fantastic tool not only for just viewing your 3D files, but also integrating 3D models into your Photoshop workflow, as well as using it and its AI capabilities for doing some fantastic concept work as well. So without much further ado, let's get into it. All right, so in this video, we're going to break it up into four main sections. Section 1 is a quick introduction as to where the heck you get the Adobe Substance 3D Viewer from. Section 2 is just going to be a quick intro of the features, how to bring in a 3D model, take a look at it, make some simple changes, that kind of thing. Section 3 is going to be all about integrating these 3D models with your Photoshop files. So how can you bring 3D assets into your 2D designs in Photoshop? And the fourth one is how Firefly, Adobe's generative AI tool, is actually integrated into the Substance 3D Viewer. And so the last step will be taking a look at how you can leverage those two things together to really create some amazing concepts and ideas for your future design. So first things first, let's get into section 1. Where do you get this from? To get the Substance 3D Viewer, you want to do that through your Adobe Creative Cloud desktop app. So this is the app that you use to install software, update software, open software, and kind of interact with this is like your central Adobe hub. So you'll probably look through the apps and you'll say, hey, Mike, I can't find the Substance 3D Viewer anywhere in here. And you're right. And that's because as of the recording of this is a beta app. It was just announced. It's not fully out there yet. So you have to go into this second tab over, this beta tab. So you select this, and this is all of Adobe's beta tools that are available to you. And within this, you will find the Substance 3D Viewer. Now, while we're in here, I will also mention that you should also get the Photoshop beta tool if you plan on using the Photoshop integration as well. But for future reference, this is all of the publicly available beta updates that Adobe has released to the public. So you can always find the latest and greatest in here if you so desire. Okay, so you've got the Substance 3D Viewer installed. All you have to do is just click open. So you open it up. This looks very familiar to other Adobe apps. You can see where you can either open a file up here, or you can drag and drop a 3D file into the center here. Now I'll put the full list of what 3D files can be used in the Substance 3D Viewer, but it's basically like your standard ones. It's built off of USD, so all the USD flavors work in here. You've got things like OBJ, FBX, all the standard 3D file formats. And the one that I'm most excited about is a huge list of CAD formats in there as well. If you're somebody who has worked in a company where you have CAD models, you know how difficult it can be to intermix those with other 3D formats, but the Substance 3D Viewer makes it super easy. It's literally just drag and drop. For starters, if you just want to play around with this without a 3D model,
you'll need to turn off airplane mode.
And of course, Siri thought I was talking to it. Okay, so here we go. To get started, if you would like to use the default 3D model, just click this camera up here that says Getting Started with a Sample 3D Scene. This will load a 3D model of a camera into the center of the viewer. Now, the first thing you want to do is you're going to want to start moving around this space. So I will direct your attention to this bottom bar. This will tell you exactly how to do that. You've got your directions here in the middle. So if you have a 3-button mouse, the right mouse button will allow you to orbit. The middle mouse button will allow you to pan. And then you can dolly by just scrolling that middle mouse wheel in and out. If you do not have a 3-button mouse, you have the option here of a 2-button mouse. It'll give you your directions there. If you're working on a laptop and have a trackpad, you can use it here. It's just some simple gestural, two fingers to orbit, space and 1 finger to pan it around, and then pinch zoom to dolly it in and out. Very, very handy. So again, this is not a super advanced 3D tool. This is meant to work on any device anywhere. So very handy that way. Just going across the top here, just so you can see some of the other quick features. We're in the 3D view right now, which allows us to pan around and check things out. There's a canvas view that allows you to see it within a background, so you have a better idea of kind of what it'll look like in Photoshop if you wish. Then you also have this fit to selection, which is handy if you're tumbling around and you kind of get off, you lose track a little bit and you need to recenter things. So you can just click that fit to selection and it'll zoom in on any single component. So you can either, you can do that to kind of center your camera around. We also have the camera settings, so I can use this to set either a super wide angle or telephoto lens. I can use my field of view there, or you can switch between the perspective and orthographic views as well. Then I skipped over the reset button. This is your Control Z, in case anyone's never used Control Z in their life, in which case I bow down to you because I use it every minute of every day. So up here, we've also got some additional views. You can see that canvas view. You can go front view, back view, bottom, top, all the different orthographic views if you want to take a look at that. And then over here to the right, these are going to be essentially your render settings out here. So by default, the Substance Viewer will start with just kind of this very fast, real-time view of your 3D model. But you can see there's some kind of goofy things going on, like this glow looks a little bit goofy. That's because it's not fully ray traced. And same thing with the glass, it's just kind of transparent. Ray tracing is a more advanced calculation that takes into account secondary bounces and just higher levels of calculation, specifically with reflections, refractions, anything that's, not just pretty much a straight up color. So to activate that, you just click this little kind of checkerboard button here. That'll turn on the ray tracing and give you a more detailed, more accurate look as to how your 3D model will look. But as you can see, as I move around, it gets like super grainy and pixelated. And then when I let go, it locks in. It's because that extra calculation takes more processing time and is a little bit more labor intensive on your computer. And so it's just, you end up just kind of hopping back and forth between the real-time view and the ray trace view in that. If you want to take just a snapshot of your screen, you can do that here, either by clicking the copy to clipboard and you can paste it somewhere, or you can save the snapshot as a image format. If I wanted to render this out entirely and export this image as something else, I can click the larger export image button, tell it where to go, tell it the aspect ratio, resolution, the quality. This is how grainy and noisy it looks. The higher the cleaner the render, but it takes longer. And then your format. So you can render this out as PNG, JPEG, TIFF, EXR, or a BMP file. And then the last little button here is just in case you want to give me feedback on your user experience. The team is very actively trying to figure that out too. So you can either leave feedback there, or you can just drop it in the comments of this video. I will be glad to bug them for you. Okay. We will now shift our attention over here to the left-hand side of the screen. So we've got some different menus here. So the files is the one by default. That's just giving us some basic information and allowing us to move the 3D model in a very simple way. I'll show you that in just a second. But then you've got appearance, composition, environment, and generate, which we'll talk about here in just a second. So for the files, again, you can, if your file comes in and it's not at the origin, you can move it to the origin. If you want to move it onto the ground, like we have it here, you can move it onto the ground. If your up axis isn't right, because some software use Z up, some use Y up. If yours comes in and it's not right, all you gotta do is just click this and it'll, you can change which way is up in case your model gets flipped around a little bit. And then down below is just some default information on it. The next step up is the appearance. So this is going to allow you to change some of the material properties on this if you want. So all of these, come in with material characteristics. But if I want to add something else, like let's say I like this leather, but we have some special version of this camera coming out, then I just want to play with some different ideas. Like I'm an art director, but I want to give the 3D people something to chew on for an idea. I can click this material presets. This will bring up some preloaded Substance materials in it now. So if I wanted to add different things, if I wanted to make this a velvet or a wool or like a denim, I can do that as well. And then you can start with that. And of course, all of your parameter settings are over here. So we have the resolution, we have the preset. So I can say a beige denim or dark blue, something like that. And then you can repeat it. You can see the scale is pretty big. The larger I make this number, the more it repeats, meaning it gets smaller on the actual object. So this will help scale your material to the object. And then down here is each one of these parameters is custom for the individual object. So this one's just got roughness. So if I want to make a super shiny denim with a sheen on top, I can do that as well. But as you might expect, some of the materials that you might want aren't necessarily here. If you have a Substance subscription, you can also access the Substance 3D Asset Library. This is the Substance 3D Asset Library. Again, it's substance3d.adobe.com/assets. I'll have the link down below. But this is, the Substance team puts this together. There's a team based in France who are just churning out materials and models and everything else for you and your team to use at any capacity that you could possibly want. And for this one, I'm going to say, you know what? I want there to be, like let's say our camera company has that, tradition of kind of having a leathery plastic on that side, but I want to make something special. I want to brainstorm some ideas. I'll just start looking through the leathers here, seeing what's available. I like this. Ooh, look at this metallic one here. I'm going to go ahead and download this. And this will now be downloaded into my downloads folder. And I could take that file and drag and drop it directly into the viewer, and automatically it gets updated in there. And now I can say, you know what? That size is a little bit too big. I'm going to scale this down. I also don't want a bright green because that will create some reflected light into my scene. So I'll go ahead and take that down. To get that, you just need to drop down this metallized leather filter tab, go to the green color, and we'll take that down to like a nice kind of a jet black. We've got a little bit of colors here in the shagreen area. So we're going to just take those down too. All right, cool. All right, great. Now we've got our new updated version. And actually, if we want, maybe we can make these a little bit of a kind of a golden color, just to kind of give us a little something else. So that's how you can easily and quickly add new materials onto something. All right, next up, we have our composition tab. So as you go into this, you can see, you can control how you want the position of the object. You can rotate this around. You can, change things as you want based on the position of the material. You can change the frame. You can change the angle. You can have all this different stuff. You can drop in different backgrounds and play with kind of the overall appearance of it here. And again, moving it to the ground, moving to the origin, and framing to the canvas is always great here too. Next up is our environment. As a longtime lighting artist, I absolutely love this one. So this is one where you can say, we've got there's basically a light rig built into this by default. And we'll go ahead and turn on our ray tracer again so we can really see it. And there's 3 different ones built in. There's a studio, there's exterior, and then there's another kind of more interior one. And you can see just by rotating these around, you can change the lighting setup. So basically what this is a 360-degree photograph of either an environment or a studio. And based on what's bright and what's dark in that image, it will create a lighting environment that looks like that. And for you, all that means for you is that you can go through here and say, you know what, I want this brighter, I want this darker, or I want to rotate it around. And we'll talk more about this too, but you can also put in your own light rig in there as well, and I'll show you that in a future one. But just know that option is available there. And then if you look down here, you've also got you can turn on and off the ground plane, depending on if you want it to catch shadows. You can enable reflections down there as well. So, and then you get your reflection controls, and then you get a denoiser. Denoiser is essentially, you've got all these little kind of Firefly grainy bits on the render. A denoiser will just go through in the end and kind of do a cleanup pass if you want that on there as well. And then down here, this generative button is the generative Firefly AI feature. We'll talk about that one in the last section, so I don't want to do any spoilers here, but just know that that's where that is. So overall, that is a overview of the Substance 3D viewer. In the next section, I want to jump into how you can use it in Photoshop. For this Photoshop workflow section, I wanted to actually put together a couple of 2D images, like some marketing images of how you could utilize the 3D models in your work. So I went ahead and I put together this advertisement for the world-renowned Tanzillo Museum of Imaginary Art, based in the town that I live in, Berkeley, California. And I just kind of want to show how you can bring this 3D model in here to kind of simulate that. And then the second one is this apple juice container. Again, both the teapot and this apple juice container were in previous demos. So if you want to check out how to create those 3D models, again, I'll put the link in the comments down below. But for starters, we'll just start off with, again, just a simple design here and a design here for the applediest apple juice in the world. All right, so for the Kintsugi one, now this is a ridiculously hard workflow right now of getting your 3D model into Photoshop. So I want you to watch real close. It's going to be crazy. You can literally take it and drag your 3D file in. That's it. Sorry, I was kidding about that. And so it just takes a second. It'll pop in here. But the one thing that you'll notice is that you don't really have much control over this. Because again, it's like, okay, I mean, like that's cool or whatever, but I can, scale this up. I guess, I mean, I could probably make some tweaks to it in Photoshop because, I'm sure you all are Photoshop magicians and can do whatever. But the reality is that like the lighting isn't really exactly what I want. The position isn't really what I want. I want it kind of down here, but the teapot itself, the nozzle is facing the wrong way, and I kind of want it to face back in. So in order to adjust this, I simply go into my layers, and you'll see inside this teapot, there's this little box inside the box, right? And so if I just double click on that guy, it will open that 3D model directly in the Substance 3D viewer. So now I have this connection between the two. So I can go back and forth between the viewer and Photoshop. So if I go back this way and I can kind of zoom in and reposition this, awesome. And then I say to Photoshop, this new button, because we launched it from Photoshop, you get this new button here that says to Photoshop. So I click this and it'll immediately open it back up. And again, I want to reiterate this, please use the beta version of Photoshop for now because it won't work with the other one. So that's how you can kind of get it back and forth. So you can kind of reposition it this way. As you can see too, like the top and the bottom are kind of clipped off because I was zoomed in too much, but it's totally fine because you can go back and forth, zoom in and out. Like I said, adjust the lighting. Another really cool trick for adjusting the lighting is holding down the shift button, and then the right mouse button will rotate your lighting rig around. Now, one of the things that I was noticing about this is I was like, you know what, man, it's just not like I want it to feel golden. The whole idea of Kintsugi is that you use gold to, update this pod, and it's supposed to, be beautiful and celebratory and all that good stuff. And I just wasn't feeling it. And honestly, all of the default lighting rigs that I have just kind of weren't giving that to me. So what I did was I went to one of my favorite resources online, which is the HDRI Haven. Not a sponsor. I'm not a sponsor of this YouTube channel, but they do exist and they're awesome. So basically, I went to this and I found my own HDRI light rigs because I was looking for, I think I looked for golden hour and probably just sunrise, sunset. And I looked through here and I was looking at the monkey head because I really wanted to create something that was nice and golden and really wonderful. And so all you have to do is you just can download that file from here and immediately drag and drop it into your scene as well. Or you can just select it from here too. So we go up, go to my HDRIs. I think it was this pedestrian overpass. Drag and drop that in. Cool. And you can see, now you can see the lighting gets updated. I can swing this around and I get something a little bit more on the color scheme that I want. That's pushing those black tones a little bit more. So then what you can do again is I can take this, I can send it over to Photoshop at the angle that I want, given the, the camera angle that I want. Like, let's say I really wanted to kind of focus in on something here. Let's try that for this time around. To Photoshop. It gets updated here. Then you can kind of put this in. And what I was doing on my final version is I really kind of wanted to play with interacting with the text. So I just created just some masks. So nothing too crazy, but you can basically select this and then use it as a mask in some of the other elements to kind of get it together. So nothing too crazy there, but it was just a matter of taking an existing 3D model. So again, if you're working with some 3D artists on your team and you want to use what they're doing in your design, you can certainly do that. Same thing with this apple juice. Again, similar idea is I took this and then just brought in the apple juice container. The first one was a USD file. This one's just a GLB. So just to show a couple different file formats, again, GLBs work really well with, e-commerce sites, websites, that kind of thing. So a lot of companies already have them. But again, like it's looking a little bit, simple and straightforward. And this is, just kind of the way it is. But I wanted to create something a little more dynamic. So again, double click on it here. It opens it up in the Substance viewer. So you just got this standard, what I really wanted to do with this was make this feel larger than life. That was my big thing with trying to get it into 3D. So I wanted to kind of, position the camera down below. I took the camera angle, made it a little bit wider angle. So it felt more like a skyscraper than anything else. And then again, render it out, send it back into Photoshop. And we'll take a look at the final version here. So again, a little bit scaled up. I goosed it around. One other thing that's kind of fun too is I was noticing this on my initial design, because I was never actually intending to see it from this angle, is that, I kind of had this pesky label here that was kind of wrapping around the bottom in a way that I didn't really want. The easiest way to solve that was I literally just used the generative fill inside of Photoshop here. So if you just kind of draw around that, and then I can just say gen fill, just enter nothing, and it does a really, really, really good job of that stuff too. So again, you don't have to solve everything in 3D. You don't have to send it back to your modeler to clean it up or update it or whatever. You can use all the same tools that exist inside of your brain and your workflows that you already know inside of Photoshop, and leverage these 3D models on top of it as well. So that's how you can use it in Photoshop. At this point, I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about the concepting and some amazing Firefly work that you can do inside of the viewer. Okay, for this last section, I want to talk about how you can utilize some of the Firefly generative capabilities inside the Adobe Substance 3D viewer to do some concepting and generate some ideas for your next project. So again, you launch it, you're at this point, you're like, man, I want to start playing around with some 3D files and kind of start game and planning some ideas. Now, if you don't have any, you can certainly go to a stock website, Adobe Stock, or if you have a Substance 3D license, you can go to the Substance 3D asset library and start downloading files from if you or your company has this. So again, for this one, we make bajillion models. It's a technical number. You can definitely hold me to that exact number. But basically, you can find a lot of what you're looking for here. So in this case, I'm just going to look for a skateboard, and we're just going to start with a little skateboard. So for this one, I'm just going to download the skateboard small, go into my Substance viewer, drag and drop this in from my downloads. And immediately you get a 3D model of the skateboard. And again, this could be a CAD format if you work with industrial designers. It could be OBJs, FBX, UCs, whatever you got, download it, throw it in, it'll work. All right, so we can jump into our Appearance tab, bring up our material presets, and I want to start just adding materials to this. So whenever I add a first material, and I'll explain why I do this in just a sec, I want to start with the material that's going to be on the most objects on my total object. So with this, although the skateboard top is a big part of it, I can see a bunch of little metal components down here, the screws, all that kind of stuff down there. So I want to start by making it metal. So we'll just make it chrome for now. So I'll just drag and drop chrome on here. I get this drop down that says apply to all objects. Yes, everything on here is chrome. Awesome. Because now all I need to swap out for my initial thought was the board and the wheels. Because that's really what I want to think about with the design of this. So for the board, I want to play around with the idea of making it wood. And then for the wheels, I kind of want to make them just like a softer rubber or plastic. So I can go into my plastic rubber section and just kind of drag and drop the rubber on there. But first, I want to shift select all of them and then drag and drop the rubber on here. And now I'd be like, I actually want to create, kind of into the mid-century modern thing. I'll just create like a lighter, almost like white wheel. And then let's take a look at the wood on top. Like that wood grain doesn't feel like it's going the right way. Like I feel like they wouldn't cut a skateboard that way. Like it would go the opposite way. It's no problem at all. You can just select it. And inside of your material objects here, I can rotate the orientation. And then I can play with some of the other sliders. So there's this fiber intensity, which you can see, you can slide that up and down. It's increasing the amount of the fibers inside the actual wood grain itself. You can adjust the vein density as well. And of course, you can go in and change the repetitions as well if you want to do that too. So, all right, cool. I think that looks pretty good. This gives me a rough idea. So this is a nice, like, little mid-century modern skateboard looking thing. I think this is kind of cool. You probably heard me mention early on that there's this magical generative AI button down here. Now we're going to get into that a little bit. So there's two things you can get into with this, because like I want to see this in context a little bit. I want to see this like in a space. So basically I want to take this and I want to say, you know what? I want to take this this model that I've created and I want to put it in a background. To do that, we'll click the 3D model to image. So that's using your 3D model and making an image out of it. You've got this composition tab down here. So the first one, the one at the top, is generate a composite scene. That's taking my 3D model and putting it in a background. So for this first iteration, I just want to put my mid-century modern skateboard in a dark alley on the ground. So I'll just type that in. I'll go into my settings. I'll make sure we're doing it as a photo. If I wanted to add any other effects or like lighting, we wanted to make some dramatic lighting, awesome. I'll click generate, and what it'll do, it'll actually take my 3D model and integrate it into a backplate. Now, one of the things that it will do is this is actually, and I'll show you, you can kind of see this as we're stepping through. It does very slightly change your 3D object or what you put in. It will hallucinate some minor details on it, but it'll keep it relatively the same. So you can start to play around with the ideas here. So that's the first step. The second one is to generate an entirely new image. So let's say this is now a dark alley on the ground, a dirty, beat up skateboard. Because now what this is going to do, it's going to take my camera placement and the placement of the 3D models and generate an entirely new image. So it'll actually ignore any material work that I did. So now you have your composition inside this alley of the object that you want in exactly the way you want it. If I want to delete this, I can just hit that. I can reposition my camera. And let's say I wanted to make it much more of like a wide angle lens on it. I'll open up my field of view, get a little closer, and then say the same thing again. And you'll see it generate a new Gen AI image based on my camera position and based on my object placement. So it's great for a single object. And if I just like want to see this in a scene, this is awesome. And then the last step of this window is I can actually use this to generate different looks for my 3D model. So if I wanted this to be a fun, colorful, rainbow skateboard, you can use Firefly to generate looks for your 3D prop. It won't give you the background, but it'll give you some ideas. So if you're trying to like concept out the way that something will look, you can use this as well. All right. Now, you may have noticed something else in this generative window when we got to it, and that is text to 3D. So very fun stuff here. So for this one, this is literally typing a text prompt and getting a 3D object. So for this, I'm going to do something a little bit different outside the skateboard theme, and I'm just going to say a rubber ducky. And we're going to let Firefly generate a 3D representation of a rubber ducky in our scene. Yes, because you can't have multiple 3D files in this at once. It's only one at a time. So here we go. We got ourselves a rubber ducky. Now this is a neural capture. So this is a nerf basically. So this is not a polygonal 3D object, but it is a kind of a hallucination of a 3D model of a rubber ducky, which is awesome. Again, combining this with some of those other tools that I just showed you, now you don't need a 3D model of anything. You can just simply type in whatever you want, position your camera exactly the way that you want, and now you can say, I want this rubber ducky like this, and I want to go back into my 3D model to image. I want to generate a new image, and I'm going to say a pink rubber ducky in a bath, modern bath. Generate. And now you can create generative AI images based on a 3D model that never existed before you typed it in and go with it from there. And you can now, again, control the composition, control the camera placement, all that good stuff. And if you want, you can also use this, again, to generate a new look for your model. So this rubber ducky, we took the skateboard, we grunged it up a little bit. Now let's just say a punk rock rubber ducky. And we'll see what we get out of that. So we'll finish it off here. And so basically this has been an overview of the Substance 3D, the Adobe Substance 3D viewer. The idea is, again, you can use this to generate ideas. You can use this to integrate 3D objects into your Photoshop files, or you can use it as your what happens when I double click a 3D model, where does it go? And it's a very powerful tool. Again, still beta, still figuring some stuff out, but glad to hear your feedback. Again, there's the survey button in the upper right-hand portion. But you could also just leave comments down below and I'll relay any information onto the products team at Adobe. And I look forward to seeing the amazing things that you all can create with this. So until next time, have fun, everyone.